You must stay at home. Stay at home.
Hello and welcome to Lockdown, hosted by Steve Bomford with Mike Davis-Marks. Our armed forces operate in challenging environments. Week by week, we'll explore what we can learn from their experiences.
Hi Steve, you remember that article I shared with you from LinkedIn from a former Army Marine called Pete Kelly? I understand he's the subject of our next podcast.
Indeed, he is, and what an article it is! I was very surprised. He was very candid. But yes, I couldn't not get in touch with him, having read that.
Well, I've read the article, obviously, so I'm now fascinated to know what came out in the podcast.
Well, let's have a listen. Peter, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast.
No, it's my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
So, in our little preamble before I hit the record button, I just asked you how we should play this, and you said, let's just go for it. So, in the spirit of let's just go for it, I'm going to start at the beginning, which seems like an odd place to start these days. You are a friend of Mike's, my co-host on the podcast, and he sent me a link saying, I think you should read this. And it was the post that you put on LinkedIn on or around Remembrance Day of last year. And it was, it was a very personal story, wasn't it? I think it's fair to say. Would you just like to elaborate on that story and how you find yourself where you are today, I think?
Yes, it was a weird evening, actually, because I've been going through some stuff over the last sort of 6 months, some really big changes in my life. And I sat there on my own and I was thinking about Remembrance Day and I was thinking about friends. I'm a former Royal Marine and I've lost, I think, 9 friends over the last 10 years. So it's, you sort of sit there and you start thinking about them and about, life and life in general, and then started reflecting. And so I sat there, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning and I couldn't sleep. And I was just like, I need to get this down. I need to write it down. I need to get it out of my head. And I thought if I got it out of my head, it'd be out of my head and I could sleep. And so I was on LinkedIn anyway, and I just started a new post, and I didn't really know where I was going with it. I didn't know if I was going to post it. I just needed to get it into words. And I started the post with, I don't know where I'm going with this, essentially. And then just wrote, and I wrote for probably an hour and a half, and it was a very freeing experience about just being open and honest with myself, really, and saying all the things to myself, or I wanted to say to myself, but not actually saying it, if you like. So it was quite interesting. So just to put some context around that is, I joined the Marines in 2005. I was 18. I came straight out of college. I failed college. I went to college to get fit, essentially, and I wasn't very good academically, and I didn't really do very good at school, and it was all because of my childhood that led me to that. And then, ended up having a very successful career in the Royal Marines. But I went through this period over the last sort of 6, 7, maybe 8 months where I was angry. Things had happened to me and I was trying to find answers to those things, why they happened. And I couldn't find the answers. And it made me a very angry, upset person about why I went through what I went through, why me, why certain people in my life did certain things to me. And I guess that evening of writing that, putting it onto paper, which is the first time I've ever done that, kind of let me look at it from a completely different perspective. And as I was writing, I realized that actually I'd changed my mindset around my past and not be a victim, essentially, of my past, but understand that the reason I am where I am now is because of my past. And if one tiny thing had changed on that timeline, anything had changed, then I wouldn't be where I am now. So it's looking at where I am today, and then sort of understanding that I probably had to go through what I went through to be able to even be here today and doing what I do. So I know that that's very ominous, isn't it?
Well, yes and no. I think it takes courage to share things, especially in such a public domain as well, because as I'm sure you're aware, you never know how people are going to react to people telling their stories, and I think it's that requires a degree of courage. So well done for that. I think you're maybe underselling where you're at today a little bit. Do you want to tell me, give us all a bit more context, because you've, as you said, had a successful career in the Royal Marines, but you've also had another successful career, haven't you? And when you sort of referring back and saying that's made me who I am, your experiences have made you who you are, which I would think that's probably true of everybody, but and it's not everybody wants to talk about how they've got where they are. What are you doing at the moment?
So I founded a company called Imployable, which is an app startup, and it was born of bad experience after the Marines. Funny enough, it's funny how things happen, isn't it? And I left the Royal Marines in 2015 as a corporal. I was at Lympstone as an instructor. I wanted to get into business. I didn't know what. I remember standing in front of Phil Gilby, who's the RSM at the time at Lympstone. And he was like, why on earth are you leaving the Corps? And I said, I want to get into business. And he called me nuts, said, think very hard about what you're doing, because I didn't really know what in business. So fast forward to my TX date, I left the Royal Marines. I joined a company. My first foray, if you like, into civilian world, really. I mean, I was 18 when I joined the Corps, and straight out of college. I had a job from when I was 13, but it wasn't the real civvy world. And it was a really toxic, horrible environment. It was absolutely horrible, and it was probably the worst experience I could have had.
So is that your advert for transition right there?
Yes, be very careful. I did my transition. I thought, right, what's a solid base? And a solid base was project management. And a lot of people do it. And I was expecting to go into project management, into construction first, and then move more into the commercial side, maybe contracts. And I kind of, being shielded by the Royal Marines and everything I'd ever known as an adult, it didn't do me any favors, to be honest. And so I joined this company funny enough, as a business development manager. And I didn't really know what a business development manager did. So it wasn't even project management. And I was like, okay, so it's business and development, and I'm a manager. How hard can it be? And I got in there and I did really well. I mean, I was running a marketing team, the sales team, an outbound team. And I think our lead generation went up 400% in the first 2 months, just through cultural changes, just through changing what they were doing really wrong. Or what I perceived to be really wrong, and then putting some military, across the board, Navy, Army, Air Force, our mentality of how teams work, and how we develop, our subordinates, how we manage our managers. And it worked really well, but it was just such a toxic place from the top. And I lasted 3 months there, and then I had to leave because it was absolutely breaking me. And then I spent the next year unemployed in the job centre. So I rang Phil Gilby, funny enough, or I messaged Phil Gilby on LinkedIn, and he had this very nice "I told you so" moment. Because at 2015, it was a year after the RM350. The Corps was absolutely rammed. They weren't worried about people leaving at that point. So I said, look, is there any chance of me coming back? And he was like, there is no chance. He said, I'll ask the question, but there's like literally no chance, especially as a corporal, because they're crying out for Marines. And but then I saw the reserves. I joined the reserves, who actually saved me, because as soon as I got into the reserves, I realized, there's a stigma between regular and reserves, and I feel terrible for even contemplating that stigma when I was in, and especially with the Royal Marines Reserves. And so I joined the Royal Marines Reserve. I kept my rank. I went straight in. I met some amazing people who were bootnecks through and through, and there were some ex-regulars there, and there were some thoroughbred RMR lads there, and they put me on the Royal Navy officer training team. So I was basically with the R&R training team with a load of lieutenant commanders and one Corporal Kelly. But they did that, and I was basically just thrashing these Navy officers, like the disciplinarian, if you like, because I was a drill instructor, so it kind of worked, and that saved me because I was unemployed. So already, if you think about it in context, I was lost at that point, right? I left something that I'd done since I was essentially a boy, that I did very well, that I really enjoyed. I always wondered why I left, because I didn't leave on bad terms. I absolutely loved the job. My career looked set. I could have got all the way, and it was an itch that I needed to scratch. I think to prove to myself that I wasn't a one-trick pony. That I could be successful in other areas of my life. But then after failing miserably at my first job, then being unemployed, and I remember being in the job centre, signing on, and the work coach in the DWP was just like, "There's nothing I can do for you, Pete. You don't need any help. You've got all the qualifications. It's just a matter of keep cracking on." And at that point, I started racking up lots of debt because I'm trying to keep my lifestyle from being in the Corps, but with zero income, £72 a week or whatever it was. So my every credit facility I had just got spanked. Credit cards, loans, all good debts. It wasn't bad debt, but it was good debt. And what I mean by that is bad debt is when you just owe loads of people money. Good debt is when you owe institutions money, but they've given you that line of credit. So
I thought you were gonna comment what you were actually spending it on there, and I thought this didn't expect this.
No. Oh yeah, no, don't worry about that. No, it was I got 2 kids, and I was married, and it was just about keeping the family shielded away from what I was going through. Being the man, being the bootneck, being that guy that is sat there going, "Oh, it's all going to be fine." When internally I'm tearing myself apart. And so I lost my purpose at that point. I had no purpose, I had no mission, and I really started contemplating, what I'd done wrong. I couldn't go back, but there's something inside you says, you just got to keep pushing forward. So I spent 6 weeks on YouTube learning how to build websites. I then went to some lads that I knew that were leaving the course, starting businesses. And I remember the first website I ever did. I said to him, "Look, do you want a website? I can build your website." And he was like, "Oh, I can't really afford it." I said, "Look, I'll do it for 50 quid.
Wow.
He was like 50 quid. I was like, "Look, mate, I'm gash. I'm not amazing, but it will be something that gives you a bit of presence." So instead of him going to spending £2,000, and then and he still got it. And I asked him probably about a year and a half ago if he wanted me to update it. He did me a favor, and he was like, "No, it was fine." I was like, "Wow, okay."
I'm going to assume your rates have gone up since then. This is not an advert for 50 quid websites, this podcast.
No, they've actually gone down. No, it was funny because then I kind of thought, right, there's a little niche here that I can get, and then a load of lads started coming out of the Corps, and then I started building websites for £600, £700, £800, and I was smashing them out quite quickly, but it was great little niche because people coming out of the forces couldn't afford a £2,000-3,000 website, and they didn't really know anything about business to be able to start that side up. So I always said to them, "Look, I will build you a website. It will cost you, between £500 and £700, depending on what it was, but it will pay for itself within a month. So the traction and the customers that you get will pay that back. And then in a year's time, when you've got customers, and customers are generally people who are accustomed to doing business with you, then you can invest in a better website." And that kind of worked for all parties. It kept me afloat. And then the next thing that happened was just divine intervention, and it was just the universe, I think. An ex-army captain, Oliver Lippier, he's an absolute legend of a man. He ran an app development company and sent the CV off for a technical project manager. And I thought nothing of it. And he then rang me back and he was like, "Oh, you're a bootneck, and you've got your project management qualifications, and you've built websites and that." He goes, yeah, it sounds good. So I went to the interview, suited and booted. I walked in, and there he is in board shorts and a t-shirt, and he's got my Facebook open on his laptop. And I was just like, yeah, I don't even know why I bothered dressing up for this. And it was absolutely brilliant. And he took me on. I ended up running projects for RAC, Glenfiddich, Louis Vuitton, and he was basically pimping me out to other companies as well. And I become very, very good at project management. And by the time I left, I rewrote the company's project management strategy. I was running project managers around Europe. I was flying out to Poland, and it was brilliant. But what it gave me was the quickest lesson I ever had one of the quickest lessons I ever had in the app world, in the tech world, software world. And being a project manager and a Marine and a member of the armed forces, I kind of looked at that and went, well, this is easy. All you need is an idea, because everything else is easy. And that it kind of proves that knowledge is power, right? And you don't know what you don't know, but when you know it, and you can use it to your advantage. And so I'd ran these projects for startups. So we'd have people come in off the street and say, I've got this idea. I would then basically be assigned to them. I'd help them design it, map it out, prototype it. I'd then go with the developers, scope it, build the MVP. Then after building the MVP, go and test it. Then after testing, I would go with them to their investment meetings and pitch to their investors as sort of CTO advisory, getting cash, and then build the overall thing and then get it launched proper. And, my co-founder is also a Marine, and we were on a Signaler course together in 2008, and we were only probably 20, 21. And we kind of meandered through our career, bumping into each other every so often. And then when I left the Corps, I got hold of him and said, he owned a coaching company, and I've got level 5 in coaching and all of this, and I said to him, oh, have you got any jobs going? And he interviewed me, and he didn't give me the job. And I still give him.
I was going to say, but you're still bitter. I bet you're still bitter about that as well.
Oh yeah, and I say it on every podcast I do as well, because I want everyone to know. But when you look at that, he absolutely made the right decision and proved something to me there that he's not. It's good doing favors for people, but you have to do it within what you're doing, right? Otherwise, it becomes detrimental to the people you're coaching, to your business, to everyone. So he didn't give me the job, but we stayed very close friends. And then he came to me and he rang me up at work one day and was just frustrated with how the world of coaching works and the DWP and getting people into work. And I was very frustrated about my transition from the Corps. I did zero career exploration. I wanted to get into business. I did project management because that was the one that sang out to me. And I entered the world and I didn't really know what I was doing. And I said to him, look, well, there's an idea here. We can build an app here that basically solves all of these issues. And so we met in M5 services and for about 3 hours and 400 coffees, just basically drew it. And yeah, Imployable was born. And, fast forward 4.5 years now, we've had 1.4 million pounds of private investment. We've won 18 contracts as a partner for work and pensions. We just signed a huge partnership with the NHS. We won the NatWest Entrepreneur of the Year awards in 2018 and 19. Yeah, so it's been a hell of a journey. It's been an absolute whirlwind, and we've done some fantastic stuff. And we've gone viral. It's mad. And I look back at that, and people look at me from my social media and from the outside, especially LinkedIn. I think this is why LinkedIn was so important that I did it on LinkedIn, is that everyone looks at me, my peers from the Corps, peers from civilian world, and thinks, well, Pete Kelly's got it all. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, Pete Kelly worked damn hard to get there, and so did his team, and so did Kieran and all of us. And what you see on the face of it is not necessarily the story of what's behind it. And it was, there were some really hard lessons there. And at any one of those points, from being unemployed to then transitioning to my own company, I remember the first time we went to get funding. That's so nervous. You're pitching your idea to people with money, then trying to justify valuations, for instance, and then you sat in Virgin headquarters talking to Virgin about this and that, and then you're on a video call with Indeed, which is the largest, the jobs board in the world. And they've got their head of startups there from New York, and you're sort of sat there as this bootneck, just cuffing it, just like, yeah. But at the same time, my moral compass is very true, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, so we don't go for it. So it's been an absolute whirlwind. And that night on LinkedIn was kind of worked on two ways, where it was for me to sort of talk to myself and about understanding what I went through as a child, and then as an adolescent, and then the knock-on effect that actually had throughout my life, which is a trend of my life, and understanding why sometimes I'm like I am, but then also accrediting the fact that I am where I am because of that experience. And then I got to the end and I read it back and I thought, do you know what? I am not an anomaly here. There are so many people that are having this sort of internal battle, if you like, and it's civvies as well as military. I think military is a whole different beast, because you're built to be this certain person, right? You're built to be strong, and you're built to be resilient, and you're built to be in teams, and you're built to have a purpose and a mission, and everything is very linear, right? So you plan and you execute, and then you deal with anything else that falls out afterwards. So I sort of sat there and went, do you know what? I'm going to post this. And then I thought, no one's going to see it because it's like 2:30 in the morning. But if someone does see it, then, so be it. And I pressed post, and the stuff that come back was incredible. And it wasn't a post to boost my profile. My profile is quite big already, so I haven't got to worry about that. So, and it wasn't anything to do with business. My business is quite big already. If anything, it would have been, I sat there. It's more of a risk, actually, when you have 600 shareholders and some really big corporations that work with you, because it shows vulnerability, right? And when you invest your money into someone and into a company, you want to think that they're solid. But at the same time, I think it takes a certain amount of strength to be able to acknowledge and then find a way through, because I've seen people implode. I've seen friends implode, and I don't want to get to that point,
I can hear.
I posted it.
I understand what you're saying about risk, which is probably what investors are thinking about. Of course, is can this guy deliver what he says he's going to? But I think on the plus side, there's integrity and courage that's, as I've already said, involved in this. We will, if you agree, we can post the link actually into the podcast description, so listeners can actually have a read of it. I do think it is well worth a read, and I did think it's while we're having this conversation. Well done you for doing that. But I think, it's not just about, is Pete a risk financially? I think there's a lot more to this. And if, there's you're not talking about just one thing in this post either. And I think it's worth having a read of for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's on the flip side of the risk, I thought people might look at it and go, oh my God, this guy's unhinged and he's a grenade and he's just waiting to go off. But actually on the other side of it, when you read it, one of the lads actually wrote it in the comments, which I wasn't expecting. But if you read the post and it basically goes through, and this is, it's a fraction of the story, but it's enough to give people a taste, and it's enough for other people to look at it and go, yeah, you know what, this happened to me, and I'm not looking for empathy from anyone. I'm looking for people to take the same journey, essentially, of rediscovery. And the post goes on from when I was born in South London, and my earliest memories, and just growing up in a council estate, and just how rough that is in South London, but also around family and neglect and certain abuses, and dealing with that to become the person who I was when I was 18, which was very emotionally detached person who wouldn't let anyone get close to me, because, hey, everybody or most people who were close to me growing up screwed me over. So why wouldn't anybody else? So I became a person that said, well, highly destructive, where if I started getting close to someone, I would destroy it. I would destroy it so that they couldn't. And if they couldn't, that means they couldn't hurt me. And at the time you think that's right. I look back now and I will get hold of people from my past and just, over time, because there were people there that supported me, and I just absolutely pushed them away. And, you know, I didn't treat them the way that I would want to be treated. And I didn't treat them the way that I would want to treat them. And the thing is, as you grow and the more experience you get, you become more sort of emotionally intelligent, if you like, and more emotionally aware. And once you hit that level of emotional intelligence, you can look back at certain things you've done previously in the past and just acknowledge that you would never do that again. And I think, you know, that's probably a testament to that. But since that post, I've gone through some quite fundamental changes in the way in which I think about myself and my life, and, you know, and what I want out of life at the end of the day. I've worked for 4.5 years, you know, tirelessly. I've neglected, you know, my family and to achieve this aim, but ultimately not in a malicious way, in a way that, you know, if we get this right, we could all retire by 40 and then we've got no worries, no real worries, you know. So I'm trying to deliver for my family while sacrificing my own family. It's just such a crazy place to be. And it's just funny. I'm starting to believe more and more that, you know, everything is a lesson. So everything you go through is a lesson, and but you will keep getting that lesson until you learn it. So when you think about someone who's in a depressive state, it can be, and I've been there, and I've been so low, and, you know, I've hit the drink back in the past, and I've done all of these very self-destructive things, and it comes around in revolutions. So you attract, you know, what you are, and you're a product of your environment. So if you're having negative thoughts, everything becomes negative. And that doesn't mean that you could just go, well, I'm going to think about this positively, because it just doesn't work like that. It's more of an understanding and awareness point where you sort of sit there and go, what is the universe trying to teach me in this moment? What am I not getting? And it's never just straight up, you know. It's up and down, up and down, up and down. But then the more things that you start taking out of it, the more you start to learn that actually, I think the universe has a bit of a plan for you. And, you know, that might sound cliche, and that might sound like a belief that I've structured in myself. But you know what? So what? At the end of the day, if that's what I believe, and I'm a happier person and a better person and a better person to everybody else, then, you know what? Go and believe what you want to believe, as long as it makes you a good person, and a good person to yourself. I think that's the key. I think once you're happy with yourself, you can make a lot of people happy. You know, so I look back now, and especially over New Year's, I did a lot of soul searching over New Year's, and I booked some amazing stuff in for this year because I'm concentrating on me. And I started just sort of planning out, what if this hadn't happened? Okay, would I have got the resilience to get through this? And if this hadn't happened, and this and this and this. So if you think about when I left the Corps, the transition was terrible. Right, the first thing I did was land in a company that was just absolutely horrendous. Right, but the learning point out of there was that the transition didn't work. The second learning point is that now I know how not to run a company and how not to treat people. Then I was unemployed at the job center. And then I realized I had to live through that experience to understand and empathize with the people that we support through the app who are unemployed. Because I'm not sitting on my pedestal saying you should do this. I've been there. I was there. So I see exactly how it works, which opens up the level of how I can make it right. And then going through the app development phase, you know, I learned how to build or project manage apps. I learned everything about tech. I learned everything about investment and business, and, you know, over a really short period of time. And that gave me all of the knowledge, skills, tools, and attitude to be able to go and actually fix the problems that I had when I was younger and growing up and leaving the Corps. So when you start looking, you know, on the flip side, I could have sat there and gone, the world hates me. I was unemployed. Oh, I got lucky with this job. Oh, no, everything's a struggle with this business and I have to work so hard. So what? You know, if you're not working hard, it's not worth doing. And, you know, when we all joined the military, of course it was hard, whether it was the Navy or the Marines, you know, or Special Forces, everything was hard, but you did it because that's what you wanted to do. And you didn't feel sorry or become a victim. You know, you're there for a higher purpose, one that's probably bigger than yourself, and boom. So when you start looking at those two different sort of lines of thought, if I'd have gone the way of, you know, I'm a victim and I've been unemployed and this happened to me and this happened to me, all I'm then doing is looking for the next thing to happen to me that's going to put me back into that state of disrepair, if you like. Whereas if you could change your mindset to say, that taught me that, and I needed that because look what I did there, and that taught me that, and that, and that, and that, and that, and that. So then instead of looking for the next thing that's going to screw me over, I'm looking for the next thing that's going to teach me a lesson. And it means that I'm going to learn that lesson much quicker, because even though I won't know what that lesson means down the line, I know that that lesson is important. So, I look now at what's happened to me over the last 6 months. I split up with my wife. I've moved out. I've lived on my own now. It's the first time in 35 years that I've lived on my own. So, I was at home, and then I joined the Marines, and so it's I've sat here quite lonely and thinking, what have I done? And then I think, well, what's the purpose of this? And when you do, you think, well, actually, this is the first time probably ever where I have no choice but to talk to myself. And if I'm going to talk to myself, it's going to be about something that makes myself better. So 27th of this year, it's just so funny how things just happen when they're meant to happen. And I had my children, they got COVID, so I couldn't have them over Christmas, and that was particularly bad. And then came New Year's, and I had my kids, and I rang Kira and I said, look, you know what? I'm not going to force life anymore. I'm going to let life come at me, but I'm going to be open to life, and I'm going to do some things for me. So there and then I booked to climb the 3 highest peaks in Morocco, in North Africa, and I spoke to them, and so that's all booked. And then I got a couple of other friends who I know that was going through some hard times, and I said, look, let's book this for April. Let's just fly to Marrakesh. Let's climb these mountains. Let's have a goal. We could do some fizz. We can, get ourselves mentally, and we can stand on the top of the mountain in April and say, do you know what, we did that. And that kind of spiraled into a load of different things, because then I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, I might as well do more. And I do a lot for charity. I've always done a lot for charity. I've raised tens of thousands of pounds for charity. And I thought, well, I'm going to come up with 10 challenges this year that I'm going to do. Half of them are going to scare me, and half of them are going to just be horrible. And but half of them are going to be amazing as well, because you don't just have to put yourself in the hurt locker to make money for charity. It can also be something that you enjoy. So I've got, well, we'll come on to what I'm doing in the next 3 months, no doubt, shortly. And then straight after that, I'm doing the 3 peaks. Then I'm doing a skydive for charity. Then I've got a mixed martial arts fight that was supposed to be last year that's been moved, so a cage fight. Then I'm just about to get a place in the London Marathon, which is really good. Then I'm climbing a 6,500 meter peak in the Himalayas in Nepal. So I've basically come up with all these challenges that I want to do, and some of them are very personal and not for charity. They're just for me. This is what I want to achieve, and I feel really good about that. I feel like I have a plan. I feel like that I have a life outside of the business, and I feel like that I have a bit of a purpose now. Right, my purpose: I want to raise £50,000 charity this year. That makes me feel good. And people say there's no such thing as a selfless act, and in some respect, I do agree, because yes, I'm doing all these things that I will love, but as a residual sort of benefit, I'll be doing it for charity as well. So we're helping 2 people at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's been quite a freeing experience. And then New Year's was the best sort of reset I ever had. I rang my dad. I was in a bit of a bad place because I couldn't see my kids, and I rang my dad on New Year's Eve and I said, look, Dad, I think I'm going to drive down to London. It's about 200 miles away. I'm just going to come and see you for New Year's. He wasn't doing anything. And so I'm going to go to the gym, and then I'll call you. And then I was in the gym. I was absolutely thrashing myself, as you do. And one of my mates walked in, had a chat with him, invited me to a party. I went to a party. It was completely sober. We were all sober. And we had an absolutely amazing evening out of nothing, just by being open to that. So, it's kind of made me feel that I'm going to let life come at me. And I think,
can't work out whether you're a philosopher or whether you're solving this puzzle, or is it both? It's fantastic the way you talk about this, Peter. It really is. And, but it's an ongoing journey, isn't it? This is very much a live project. If that's you are a live project and you're still working on it. And I think that's the sort of space and consideration you're now giving yourself is really important, obviously for you, but I think more broadly, that's something where everybody is really rubbish at. And I think COVID has made that a lot worse for an awful lot of people for some fairly obvious reasons, as you've kind of alluded to. But what an exciting journey you're on. I wish you every luck with all of this. I really do.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, life is a journey, and there is no end point, right? But I give a lot of talks. There's a lot of the talks I say, around knowledge and power. And it's 2021. Or it's not. It's 2022. And you can learn anything in 2022. It's everything that you want to know. But only go and learn what you're interested in, right? So in these talks, I say, if I get in my car right now and I start driving, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just driving around. If I get in my car and I know my destination, at least I know where I'm going to end up, and I will end up there eventually. It might not be efficient. It might take me ages, but I will end up there. But then if I have a map or a sat nav and I know my destination, I get there very quickly, and I get there, hopefully quite easily. Yes, there'll be diversions on the way, but without that knowledge, firstly, of where it is that you want to be. And I think that's an internal thing, right? And I think COVID has made people realize that it's like being in prison, wasn't it? I'm not living life. I'm not happy with myself. And the biggest key for me, the biggest freeing experience was, I don't need to make other people happy, right? I don't need to work to make other people happy in the first instance. I need to make me happy. And if I make me happy, inadvertently, it will make other people happy. So, I was going into the office and just being moody, and my staff were like, "Oh, why are you such a moody so-and-so?" And that reflects on them. And now I go into the office and I'm very joyful, and I'm spreading love, and people think I'm nuts. And it's just different, because they're like, "Oh, Pete's in a good mood. I'm going to be in a good mood." And if something goes wrong, I look at it completely differently. And I'm not like, "Oh my God, this has gone wrong." I'll go, "Okay, let's take a minute. Let's look at what's gone wrong. Let's get all of the evidence that we need, and then let's come up with a plan. If the plan's wrong and it doesn't work, so what? As long as we don't do that same thing again, we'll keep doing the things that don't work until you find the thing that does." And I think that's the key. And there's some other great things as well, and it is philanthropy and philosophy and all of this. It's more of a look. I'm on this journey. This journey is changing my life, and in the knock-on effect of that is I'm changing other people's lives, and I just want people to go through that same journey. And can you imagine if everybody went on this journey, what a better world we'd live in? And so and it is up and down. I mean, on Wednesday, I run a very successful, busy business, and I'm the CEO of that business. And now on Wednesday, I'm moving to Wales for 3 months to drive an ambulance in Wales.
Come on, tell us about this, because I did know about this. Yeah, this is not a surprise, but I think I was surprised when you told me this is what you were doing. So come on, tell me about the ambulance.
Yeah, so I'm in the reserves, in the Royal Marines Reserves, and I'm still there. I got told, right, I've got C1 license, and this has come up, and so I've embraced that and gone, do you know what? Yeah, absolutely. 3 months is a small ask to go and help amazing people do an amazing job. Just to be an enabler. I don't need to be the star of the show. I need to get the stars of the show where they need to be. And therefore I will get in my big Nino and I will drive the actual stars to wherever they're needed. And if that's my way of saying and giving back to, through the pandemic, I'm not looking for an MBE, but at least then I can sort of, again, in myself say, yeah, I did that, and I just enabled people. I'm not going to be there saving people's lives, but I'm going to be helping the people who do, and helping just relieve the strain. And that's what we can do. And that's a great thing for the military. It's a great story for the military. That's what the military is for, both foreign and domestic, is to help. People get the wrong perception of the military. But at the same time, from a business perspective, you think, oh my God, you're ripping the CEO out of the business. But over the last 4 years, we've built a fantastic team. So Marina is our COO. She's second in charge. She is a better business person than me. I can categorically say that. She's now stepping up as CEO for 3 months. So she will absolutely be fine. The company will probably be more successful. I'll get the sack when I get back.
But do you think your experiences are helping you to be able to let go of that? Because I run my own business as well, and I'm pretty sure you're going to say something similar. But letting go, especially if it's your baby, your idea, so on and so forth, that kind of challenge of letting go. So 3 months of driving an ambulance. Do you think basically that your experiences are helping you with this? Because you've obviously gone through a fairly interesting previous 12 months.
Yeah, it's there is always ego in business, right? Especially when you start winning awards and you do podcasts and you do these things and you think, oh, But it's always very important. And I think the military is really good for this. Civilians don't quite get this, but when you're in the military, when we was in Afghanistan, yes, we're focused on what we're doing right at this point, but you always understand that there's something much bigger above you that you're just a part of. And when it comes to business, I'm not here to screw anyone over. And I'd like to think that everybody who's invested in the company, everyone who works for the company, understands that I will do whatever it takes to make this company successful, even to the detriment of myself. When I look at that and I think, right, I've got 600 shareholders, we're probably the most heavily invested military company in the UK. So we've probably got 200 veterans who have invested in our company, all small amounts, ranging from 20 quid all the up to tens, hundreds of thousands. So I think when you sort of look at it and say, well, this company is much bigger than me, and the reason I run this company is not to get rich, and I don't want to be the richest man in the cemetery, and I'm not the highest paid person in my company, and I'm fine with that. What I want to do is solve some really big social issues. Now, when you think about that, am I the right person to solve those issues? Well, we just don't know. But if I'm not, well, guess what? I am going to go and find the person who is, who's going to run that. Because at the end of the day, this is my legacy. And yes, ultimately, when it comes to, everyone thinks I'm rich, I'm actually very, very poor. But when it comes to the value for my shareholders, value for our users, value for our clients, if I'm not the right person, well, I need to find that out sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And so if this is a good test, the residual benefit of this deployment, that we can sit there and have a board meeting in 3 months, go, well, actually, the last 3 months has gone really, really well. We've accelerated here, here, and here. Who am I to stand in the way of that? I would literally step aside, do my role that I used to do anyway, and just support. And, because at the end of the day, this is what we're trying to achieve is much bigger than any individual, and it's much bigger than me. And it represents a purpose and a mission for a lot of people. So a lot of people that have invested in us have had a similar journey with their transition, right? So the business is owned by them. They're owners of the business. It doesn't matter how much, they still own the business. The business is a reflection of what they believe, but the business is also there to go and solve the problems that they have. So who the hell am I to make that all about me and personal?
Yeah.
So my job is here to make sure that happens in any way that I can. If I had to just make the tea and make everyone happy, then that's what I do.
Do you make a good cup of tea?
I do. I make a mean cup of tea, mean wet, yes,
mean
and lots
wet.
of them.
So, can anybody use this app? Or is this?
Yeah.
So, so our listeners can use the app, and very briefly, how does it work?
So the first thing I realized about transition is that there's no career exploration, right? You get put onto a course, you learn how to write a CV. I left the call with a 12-page CV, and they said that was okay. And then I got called to a job interview. And when I got there, they said, look, we're not interested in you for the job, but we're going to show you and sit with you and rewrite your CV. How amazing is that? Yeah, I was disappointed, but at the same time, they helped me, because fail early, right? Failed early. And that was someone who helped me to do that. And the app is designed to give people the knowledge, right? So you go onto the app, you build a profile. It takes probably 5 minutes to build a CV. You can download that as a ready to send CV if you want. But once you've done that, we have a whole career exploration module. It's 1,000 different jobs available in the UK. And the app will tell you everything you need to know about that job, but it will also show you as a percentage how you fit that job.
Right.
So personally and professionally. The second big feature that we have, which, and it's free, and I worked very hard and did the deal of my life to get this for free, is a personality profiling tool within the app. So you can download, build your profile, take this personality profiling tool. And once you've done that, it will tell you very, very, very in depth about how you fit in certain roles, certain positions, certain teams. So you can start to understand, the types of jobs that you need to be looking for. It will plot you on a graph of where you should be sort of looking. And we had this peer reviewed, we tested it within house, so we all did it in work. And then we gave everybody access to everybody's personality profiles. And we sat there, it was like, oh, that's why you're a knob. That's why you do that. That's why you react to certain things this way. See, we understood each other, and it's really helped the team dynamic. And But for me, it's helped me understand myself. Why do I fly off the handle when this happens? Well, in this environment, you are very this, and this. So, okay, I have to remember that, and I can't change my personality. That's been developed over a long time. So that is very, very important. And then what the next transition of the app is we will show our users how they fit from their personality profile compared to jobs.
Yep.
So we're doing it with the NHS at the minute. The NHS are putting out lots of stuff. They're doing the personality profiling. So we will be able to say someone, here's the graph of the person who would fit this job, and here's your graph overlaid, and you're a good fit. And this is your percentage fit eventually. You're 98% fit personally to be a nurse, for instance. So you think about then the dynamics of career exploration has completely changed, right? I'm not just looking at what I'd seen on TV or on a TV advert.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, firstly, what is available. Secondly, what that entails. Thirdly, I'm looking at how I fit personally. And then, lastly, the app tells you how you fit professionally. So it has all of the qualifications that you need to break in, and it will say you're 10% qualified. You press that, it then shows you the qualifications that you're missing. You then press find. It gives you every qualification provider in your area that can give you those qualifications. We're now doing a big project with the ELC, which then will show military what ELC courses are available to them to be able to get the qualifications to be able to break into that industry. So people make informed decisions, because I gob off a lot about PTSD, right? And PTSD does exist, it clearly exists. But I think it gets misdiagnosed so much. I mean, when I was going through a bad place, I rang up, and the Veterans Gateway do a great job. They do a great job. There's just too much going on for them to handle, I think. And I spoke to someone, I said, look, this is not PTSD. There might be forms of it, but this is childhood. This is personality thing. This is something that's developed over a long time. And the person came back and said, right, ring this PTSD number.
Right.
That did more damage to me, because I wasn't now being listened to either. So I sat there looking at the message on my phone saying, I've finally reached out to someone. I've told you what I believe it is, and you've done that. And then guess what? I didn't call them. I threw my phone.
Yep.
And then I'm in a worse place. So I think actually there's a whole new thing. Two things. Firstly is I think prolonged, so not post traumatic, but I think post prolonged. So post prolonged stress disorder. That's not a clinical term. That's just something I've made up. But I think when someone is under prolonged stress for a long time, it doesn't have to be traumatic. I think that causes certain mental health issues. And that has to be looked at differently to a traumatic incident. Yeah. The trauma is over a long time. And then I think the second thing, which is where I was, is lack of purpose, lack of mission, right? I come from an organization that is one of the best in the UK, with some of the best people I've ever met, in a close-knit team where we speak our own language, for God's sake. Do you know what I mean? And you have that, and in an 8-man grot, and that it's shared experience, and then you get ripped out of that. And now all of a sudden I don't have that network. And you can find it online, but online is empty, right? It's just a computer screen talking to a computer screen, where you lose that real interaction.
Yep.
And then I think from that point, when you start analyzing your life and how alone you are, you've got no purpose or no mission. What's my purpose in the world now? What is my mission? I don't have a mission. And when you're in the armed forces, all armed forces, everything is a mission, right? And now we don't have one. So what they've made you to become. So, the PTSD, it definitely does exist. I just think there's different forms of stress disorder that are being completely neglected. And the knock-on effect of that is that people with true PTSD, and I know a few, are kind of slipping through the net, because everyone's got PTSD. And then if you look at the economic sort of knock-on of that, I've read things that make me very, very angry, and I try not to be angry. I try to educate rather than antagonize. But when you see employers going, "Oh, I'd never hire military because they've all got mental health issues."
Yeah.
But the problem is it's a very vicious circle, because we want people to come out and talk about mental health, and then it's in the news about the Office of Veteran Affairs giving out so much money to veteran mental health, that translates into a commercial world, because a lot of people who leave the military don't really understand the commercial world. And as a business owner and someone in the commercial world, work with some really big companies, there is a very fine line between being supportive and empathetic to being closed and risk averse. So although you might sit there as a business owner and say, oh, this is great, veterans are getting exactly what they want and they deserve it, but I'm not going to hire them because I don't need that admin.
Mm.
So by shouting about it and by doing all of these things, now I'm not saying it needs to be sort of this silent epidemic, because it definitely doesn't. I think that along with these news articles and pieces that are going out needs to be education, right? Because actually, if a business owner understood, someone with post-prolonged stress disorder or someone who's got a lack of purpose, lack of mission, if that business owner gave them a mission and brought them in as part of their purpose, then my God, would they have found an absolute diamond of an employee? Right? But they're not educated on that.
Mm.
And then, in the same vein, if you're looking for those people who want a mission and a purpose, then as a business, we exist as Employable to ensure that everybody, no matter their age, background, ability, or disability, has equal access to careers, right? And that is our purpose. That is our mission as a company. And we attract people who also believe in that mission. So now companies need to look and say, well, what's our purpose as a company? Is it to sell lamps or, sell alcohol? What is it? What is your mission? Because once you get that, people will go, yeah, I believe in that too. And I want to work for that. And especially with a veteran, if you've got a veteran who goes, actually, I'm very, very passionate about what you're trying to do, especially around sustainability, stuff like that. You've just given them a purpose, you've given them a mission, and they will be the best employee you ever had. And it's just not educating. We're just not educating the business world. We're scaring them where we should be educating them. That's why I exist now. This is why I do podcasts like this. I speak to MPs, I speak to businesses, I speak to business owners, and work with the Armed Forces Covenant. And I was very proud actually last year, because I think we're probably, I'm not sure, I might be wrong, but I think we're probably one of, if not the only company that's gone bronze, silver, gold as a startup, 3 years on the bounce for the Armed Forces Covenant. Now we're with like Barclays and people like that, who big companies, Jacobs, who have all got gold, and there's little old us, like that. Hi, you all right? Yeah, we're a startup. We live in Plymouth. But I think that's a testament to that personal mission of educating the world on just how valuable veterans can be, but also educating that veteran who might be in a really crap place on just how valuable they are. They just haven't discovered it yet, or they haven't been discovered yet. So discover it in yourself, and very quickly other people will discover that, and you'll never look back. That's simply it.
Wow. I mean, I couldn't agree more with all of that. I think, there are many people that have said very similar stories in terms of, pigeonholing mental health and what it is. And you're right. I think our media-driven landscape presents some very sort of binary choices around what anything is. But in the veteran sphere, there are many terms of phrase that are, highly inappropriate, to be quite honest, and just not representative of the wider population. So I think you're absolutely right. I think we should probably wrap it up there, Peter, because I think we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, and I think we should, but I don't think everyone would listen to us.
No. If they haven't turned off already,
Yeah, they've probably all tuned out. That's been absolutely brilliant. I'm really looking forward to hearing about these challenges as well. We must stay in touch, and I think if you're up for it, and I include you driving your ambulance as well, I think that's going to probably have a few stories in there that you're not expecting. That we should catch up again maybe in a few months' time and revisit all of this. And I think I would love to have more of a conversation with you, obviously outside of this recording, so we can talk about a few things. I think that'd be fascinating. I'd just like to say once again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
No, thank you. And if anyone wants to follow me on social media and just get hold of me, I talk to people all the time. If they're struggling or they need just some advice, if it's just on business, then feel free.
Okay, cool. If you can send me whatever links you like, and then we can stick them in the description below. So if there's anything that Peter has talked about in this episode, if you're still listening to us, it'll all be in the link in the description below. The links will be in the description below. Click away and get in touch with Peter. Thank you very much.
Even if you think I'm talking rubbish, just come and tell me I'm talking.
Even if you think you've opened the floodgates now. Okay, listeners, do it.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Well, there was a lot to digest in there, wasn't there, Mike? He likes to chat. I think we know that's a fact, but some pretty serious stuff as well.
Oh, amazingly serious stuff. I mean, I read the article before you recorded the podcast, and there's an awful lot of layers and depth in that. But I think the podcast brought it all to life. And there's a huge amount that he covered over a relatively short period of time. It was really incredible.
It was quite a life story as well. I think, it's that story again of, people kind of joining the military to help as well. And he talks a lot about purpose or mission, as Peter called it. Yeah,
I mean, there's lots of things we could comment on. I suspect we won't have time to cover it all. But, in short, here's a person who's had two successful careers, one in the Royal Marines and then one now in business. And in largely both, he was unprepared for both and has more or less got to him through sheer effort and determination. It's an incredible story of someone battling against the odds and then coming, rising to the top as a result of hard work, sheer hard work and determination.
Yeah, never ever give up, I think. Isn't that Mr. Churchill?
Yeah, well, it could be Mr. Peter Kelly as well. But I mean, I there was so much to go through there that you did actually raise one point which I was going to raise, which is he kept on rightly talking about sense of purpose or mission, as you called it, and he knew what his mission or his sense of purpose was in the Royal Marines. That was very clear to him. But actually, he struggled awfully when he left the Marines, and he felt it was very strong. It was very important to try and find what it was in his post-Royal Marines career. And I think he's now found it, although, as you said, it's a journey. He's on a journey, and it's a live journey that's still, I think you called it a live project. You called him a live project. And it's still work in progress.
Sounds like I put him in a petri dish or petri dish, however you say that.
I suspect you could never confine Pete Kelly to a petri dish anyway. No, but I thought there was a lot of points he made about sense of purpose. One point at the end, which really resonated with me, was he was talking about how quickly civilian employers pigeon ex-military, and I think you used the word pigeonhole, but we are a bunch that suffer from PTSD, as if that was a sort of universal limitation to us, where actually it's a very inaccurate description of what's going on, and therefore the employer's reticent to do that. And I thought that was a really interesting point he meant about if employers could get round that and employ and give the person space to grow, actually they'll probably get one of the best employers they've ever had.
Yeah, it's kind of been accepted as a universal truth by the media. And I think that obviously influences employers that have no experience of having probably met people that have served in the armed forces.
Yeah, that's true. And I suspect that we have a slightly different perspective because the whole purpose of Company of Makers is to address the problems around military mental health and make people more aware that they are, and they're much more complex than the PTSD, but also to get veterans and even serving members to make it okay to be not okay, to come forward and say, I've got a problem. So we tend to, the circle of people that we tend to talk to in this sphere tends to be more afflicted by this than perhaps the norm.
Yeah, I think that's true. But I think also it's not all about PTSD by any stretch of the imagination. I think the challenges of life present themselves at unexpected times. And, I think Peter's a really good example of that because obviously his child wasn't that great. That's not service attributable in any way, shape or form. And in fact, in some ways, probably has informed his later life, hasn't it? And it doesn't mean to say that the troubles that people are experiencing are service attributable at all. I mean, some are, of course, but the majority, no. Yeah,
I mean, it's a good point. And I think that those people that are listening to this podcast should go on to Pete Kelly's LinkedIn profile and read that article that he wrote. It's a harrowing tale, but it's authentic, and and he put his heart and soul into writing it. It was, I think, therapeutic to him in actually getting it out on paper. The first time he'd actually put it on paper, it was his words in your podcast. It was a very, very brave thing to do, to put it out there like he has done, and I would encourage everyone listening to this to go and find it and read it. Perhaps we'll put a link to that at the end of this.
Absolutely, yes, I would encourage. I mean, it's really difficult to talk about without reading it, because I think you need to read it in its entirety to give people context. But yes, we will put the link to the blog post on LinkedIn in the description below.
A couple of other things that I'd like to talk about. One is leadership, and the other is his day job, Imployable. On the leadership front, I think what he's doing is one of the prime examples of great leadership. So he's decided to go and spend 3 months driving an ambulance around Wales. He's doing that now. And he's given up. He hasn't given up. He's stood back from being CEO of his company. He's doing it because the NHS, in his eyes and everyone's eyes, is under stretch. And if he can alleviate that and bring, and help people deliver the service better, then he's achieved that in his 3 months of volunteering. And he's doing it as an Army Reserve, so it's not volunteering, but he's doing it as a Royal Marine Reserve. Sorry. But what I really, really liked is that and you picked up on this, he stepped away from his business, appointed his COO, Marina, to be his stand-in CEO, and he's very happy about that. And he's not trying to interfere. He's not got a long-handled screwdriver to try and control it from Wales. And he even said, and this is the best bit of leadership I've ever heard, if he gets back and the company's being run better than when he was CEO, he's going to step away and let her crack on with it. I can think of no better example of leadership than allowing, firstly, the delegation to allow that to happen and not feel that you have to be in control, but also to admit there are better people that are doing the job when they prove it and not try and muscle back in again.
I'm going to have to defer to your greater knowledge on leadership than mine. But yes, it does sound that way, absolutely. I think he got called up. Do you get called up as a reservist? I don't think he volunteered. But either way, I think let's see, because he did agree to we would stay in touch. And I can't wait to hear the stories from his 3 months driving gig. And whether he did manage to do what he set out to do in terms of his business as well.
I suspect that will be the case, but the proof will be in the pudding, as you say. So no, but it's a great thing to do, and my all hats off to him for actually just letting his company get on with it. He's built the team, and they're going to run it in his absence, and he trusts them. And I think that's a great ability of a leader. The other thing is, and I think. The work he's doing, not the ambulance driving, but in the main business he runs, Imployable or Employable Me. I'd really encourage listeners to go and have a look at that, because I've downloaded the app and I've used it, and it's a remarkable piece of tech that really does make the whole process of trying to find out what you're good at and what you can do much more straightforward and simpler. So Employable it's called, and I think you can put a link to that as well. But I would welcome what people think about that. So have a look at the app, download it. It's free, as Pete says, and see what it can do, because I think it's gonna take over the world. I think it's brilliant.
Well, I'm guilty of not having downloaded it, but I think this idea that people, particularly if they leave the armed forces and don't know how their skills could be applied or phrased in the right way to convert them to civilianese, is often a problem. That's a very kind of common refrain that you hear.
Yes, but of course, the reason it came into being is there's his own transition from Royal Marines to Civvy Street via a year of unemployment and a 3-month horrendous experience in his first job was so traumatic that he thought there must be a better way of doing it. So he was driven to producing the app based on his own experience. But actually, the people that are benefiting now are not actually ex-military, although I'm sure some are. He's got 18 contracts with DWP, for instance. He's working with an AHS trust. He's got 200, I think he said, investors. Some of them quite small, but nevertheless, there are people backing this. So I think it's gone much wider than just simply transition from military to civilian. I think it's becoming a tool that actually, the Department of Work and Pensions will, probably put in their arsenal as a main battle tank to come.
Yeah, I would agree. He's definitely a rising star and one to watch for the future. I somehow suspect we'll be talking to Peter again in the not too distant future.
I hope so. I think he's an inspiration. My last thing is really just to say that I think that there are a lot of points raised in this podcast that will give people pause to think. And I think if you've got any thoughts about what's been said, you want to discuss any of the issues that have been raised, it'd be great to hear what you think. So on one of the social media channels that you push out, Steve, it would be great if the listeners could come back with what they think about what they've heard, or have they had any similar experiences. So really just a shout out to all the listeners and saying, if you've got a story, then use one of the social media platforms that this is broadcast on and let us know what your story is.
Absolutely. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I forget them all now, but it's @Company of Makers.
Yes. Well, let's hear from you. It would be great to have a conversation about this, because I think what Pete and, in fact, all of your guests have raised over the course of the last 2 years has been some stimulating dialogue and some really thought-provoking ideas and stories.
Absolutely. And a really interesting and fascinating group of people. Yes, but listeners, please do get in touch. We want to hear from you. This is our new idea, isn't it, Mike?
It's our new best idea of the day. Yes, let's do it. Let's do it, everyone. Come on. Let us know what you think.
Yes, that would be great. Please do. Thanks again, Mike.
You're most welcome, Steve.
Thanks for listening. The Royal Navy and Royal Marines charity exists to support sailors, Marines and their families for life. If you or someone you know could do with some support, give them a call on 023 93 87 1568 or drop them an email on support@rnrmc.org.uk. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, please subscribe.